That's James's dinner. And the pasta is this stuff. And I just mixed it with this roasted red bell pepper feta wood dip, whatever. And James is going to eat the pesto dip with the vegetables. I'm going to talk about this movie and these other ones. And then James is going to talk about something.
Maybe. We'll see what.
So, I used about, like, this is such an instant meal. I know it's not the healthiest stuff, but when you're tired, this is
You didn't have a good sleep last night, and we
no
went on
fat.
a fairly substantial walk, right?
This is basically like no food. But if you're wondering why the noodles look funny, they're not. A lot of ketogenic people choose that sort of diet. They'll go for this noodle.
So it's sweet potato, is that what it said?
Yeah, it's
It should have some sweet potato. Yeah.
well, I don't think so, because it's made out of a sweet potato starch, I think. That's
Okay,
right.
not so good. Anyway.
But anyway, it's just something to get you out of eating so many carbs. If you're wanting to lose a little bit of weight, it might work out. But then if you're putting a whole container of, because it really, for about 2/3 of that package, so that'd be about, maybe even 3/4, but about 2/3 of that package, I put a whole thing of this roasted red pepper feta dip, and 2 tablespoons of this has 8% of your daily value of fat and 13% of your saturated plus trans. And that's just in 2 tablespoons. So 30 grams in this
just
package.
Use it as dip and use it sparingly.
This is 175 grams package. So, but I mean, if you're ketogenic, this might work out, because I don't think this. Let's see. Yeah, I think this would be fine for you if you're ketogenic. So, anyway, something to think about. If you're not, it's something to think about. But if you're trying to go ketogenic and lose a bunch of weight really quickly, that might work out. But I just got it because it was 94 cents a package, and then plus 30% off that, so it was like 65 cents or something a package, which is amazing for James to try it out. So anyway,
It says it's a product of China, but it looks as though it's written in Cantonese.
oh,
So
okay. Well, I think it's a Korean sort of noodle, but okay.
It says.
All right. Yeah, you're right. It does say product of China. Anyway, it was always used on top of the stack, and I really didn't think it would. Mind you, I mean, these are all.
Hallmark?
Well, I don't know if this last one is a Hallmark exactly, but they're sort of similar kind of quality of movie. But this one, it actually had an interesting story. The acting wasn't too bad and all that sort of stuff. It creeped me out because the story's about a woman. She's known the family forever. She's lived across from them when she was a kid, and she's engaged to the eldest brother, she works in the dental office, and he's a dentist there. And anyway, they're engaged, and she's going off to plan the wedding, and is spending a lot of time with the younger brother, who's always off doing exciting things. And she's always, she wants to do exciting things, but she's very sensible, and she likes to schedule her time and all that sort of thing. So anyway, she ends up, spoiler alert here, the wedding falls through, and she goes on a big trip around the world wherever she wants to go, because she'd wanted to go for a honeymoon and stuff, and her fiance didn't even want to. He was like, well, I can't leave my patients, this, whatever. And
He's a
so,
doctor?
yeah, he's a dentist.
Or dentist.
And so,
I missed that.
anyway, so that's pretty much done it for her. She wants to go around the world and see these things, and she comes back, and has a relationship, you could see, with somebody else from the clinic, that they seem to be happy together, and she ends up with this younger brother. But that's just creepy. I mean, you can't have a relationship with one brother and then end up with the other for the long term. It just, I can't see that ever really working out. It's the kind of thing you do when you're a teenager, and then you realize, oh no, this is a very bad thing to do, right? So people this age should have grown out of that, or should have realized by then, oh yeah, you can't do that. But still, the movie was entertaining. My Christmas love. This one, I don't know why they didn't call it the 12 Days of Christmas, or something like that, because it might make me not remember that I've already watched this in the future. But anyway, it was kind of entertaining. I didn't believe that the person that she ended up with, whatever, I didn't believe that would work out. Like, they're friends and everything, but anyway, whatever. It's Hallmark. What do you want? All She Wants for Christmas. I don't know about these actors in this, but it was kind of a different idea for a movie. It's like business sort of people, and who work in the business of Christmas, and
That's why he's dressed so fancy.
well, no, he's well, I guess I could give the
Looks
whole
as though he's
story away,
getting
but
ready to do a skating routine. Should we say? Really?
but
I mean,
no,
that's flash-
he works in the warehouse.
Oh.
But so, or at least anyway, it was okay. They were all okay to watch. But I'll leave James to talk to you about whatever. It looks like we're gonna have a beautiful sunny day again. It was a sunny morning, and then it turned cloudy and a little bit gloomy, a little bit of rain, and then now it looks sunny again. So wonderful. Oops, I'm just trying to get out of here. I've kind of barricaded myself in with plants. But you go ahead. You have 21 minutes to
21?
talk about whatever
Wow.
you want.
He's had 21 years. He turned 70 the other day. Kind of sober. My mom made it to 82. Almost. My dad made it to 99. Yeah, this vermicelli is, I think the root for that means worm. The original Latin, V-E-R-M. Of course, worm in German is spelled with a W, but it's pronounced something like verm. I suspect when Latin and German were the same language, something like Proto-Indo-European or Proto-Western European. That was the same word. That language. Verm. We run across these patterns. Stuff like that. Patterns in mythology. Talking to some folks today when Pauline and I were out at the walk. On the walk. And I I got talking, and I think I've mentioned this before, about the Pleiades and the pattern that we find around the world of the Pleiades being associated with the end of the world in so-called myth. More, I think stories about the end of the world would be considered more like myth and legend, definitely not history. And when they're associated with something a bit more specific than the end of the world, associated with a flood. And I was mentioning, I think I mentioned it to you folks out there. In Norse mythology, there's a particular constellation or asterism that's asterism is you generally look at as a smaller group of stars in the constellation. The Pleiades are an asterism, and they're located within the constellation of Taurus, as presently constituted. The boundaries between the constellations were set less than 100 years ago in the Western so-called scientific tradition. They were set in 1930 apparently. So, in Norse mythology, there's this association of mistletoe with the end of the world, or as they styled it in Norse, Ragnarok, twilight of the gods, end of the world. And I think it's fallen to me to be the one to discover something like the fact that the mistletoe actually represents the Pleiades, end of the world. It wasn't until I was taking a geology course where the geology prof wasn't advocating catastrophism in geology by any means. But he was mentioning that it looked as though there were some new kids on the block. They weren't that new to me. I'd heard of one of them. Napier used to work with a guy called Klug, Victor Klug, possibly. And I think they've been going, Klug might be dead since the 80s. But by comparison with uniformitarianism, new kids on the block, even by comparison with something that this professor worked on, the continental, the moving of continental plates and stuff like that. There were kids on the block. But he was talking about these folks saying, and again, he wasn't advocating, he wasn't arguing against it either, he was just saying it's out there. A little bit of information. The folks like Napier, or I guess it's Napier, and others are arguing that the world got thumped in the Younger Dryas. And when it got thumped, it was thumped by a comet or a meteorite. 17% of the world's vegetation, I think they're setting a minimum, they say that, was set on fire. And this would be, I suspect they wouldn't realize it, but it would have been like Comet Schumacher-Levy. It had already split up into several different parts of the comet that would have hit the world if there's such a scenario, and thumped the world over a period of several days. The comet Schumacher-Levy, or Levy, hit the solar system. This is in my lifetime, it's in Pauline's lifetime. I think it was something like 1993. So it's in the lifetime of quite a few people out there. It's a little over 30 years ago. Hit the solar system and hit it with not a bang, but several bangs. And we're kind of lucky. None of those parts of the comet, there were at least 20 that hit Jupiter, planet Jupiter, that none of them hit the world, because the impact and the area of impact, the disturbance in the atmosphere of Jupiter was as wide in diameter as the Earth is. just one of those impacts would have impacted the whole one side hemisphere, that hemisphere of the world, facing towards the cometary impact. Just one, not 20. If we'd taken Comet Chicxulub, I don't think it was a remarkably large comet or anything like that. It had split up into 20, 21 parts. Let's say 20. But those pieces, when they hit Jupiter, had a major big impact on the atmosphere of Jupiter. So it's, what do we do with this sort of stuff? Well, like the Ragnarok in Norse mythology involves the world being set on fire by I think he's a giant called Syrt, S-Y-R-T. Mythic figure, legendary figure, whatever. Something like a god. And he sets the world on fire. This is how Ragnarok starts. And then, it really starts, according to the story, the myth, legend, by Balder, the god of vegetation, fertility, stuff like that, getting hit by mistletoe, a sprig of mistletoe. And as I was saying, mistletoe is, I don't know how you can avoid it. Mistletoe is the Pleiades. When you look at the berries of the mistletoe, bunched together, maybe a half dozen white. If you asked any self-respecting astronomer, even self-disrespecting astronomer, asked, what does that cluster of berries most resemble out there in the night sky? And any self-respecting astronomer is going to say the Pleiades. It's going to be number one on this. There might be some sections of the Milky Way or the Hyades are near the Pleiades. They're kind of spread apart, though they're not collected like a berry, a group of berries. And sections of the Milky Way, they're kind of like near the center of the galaxy. The Milky Way is just another term for our galaxy. Okay, Milky Way galaxy. Really, galaxy, the root for that galaxy is the Greek word for milk. If you don't believe me, check it out. Just check it up properly. Don't just check up any site on the internet. Usually Wiki gets it, right? Wikipedia gets it close enough to write. So, yeah, the weird thing, it used to bother me. I knew this connection with the Pleiades at the end of the world and the flood. But I was going, and then I'd drawn this connection of the mistletoe and Norse mythology to the Pleiades. And I was going, that's weird. The end of the world for them was a fire and then flood. No, it wasn't flood. Snow. Thimble winter. The world just got enveloped in snow. It wasn't until this geologist was talking about this, he said in the Younger Dryas, I already had correlated the flood, not the biblical flood, get that straight. Just the various legends of floods around the world, legends more than myths, I'm sorry, with the Younger Dryas. And they were talking about the Younger Dryas being set off, or the disasters that occurred with animal populations and have been correlated with this burning of 17% of the world's vegetation. So that I connected with Syrt, and then all of a sudden I'm saying, how did I miss it? But the thing is, I didn't miss it. That's the Norse version of the flood, Thimble winter. It's a whole pile of water coming down in the solid state, snow. And so when you've got folks saying, it's a myth that there are flood myths around the world. Well, that's just a lie. It's intellectual dishonesty. The mere fact that someone believes a lie doesn't make it any more truthful than, let's say, Donald Trump's lies. And, or Madison Avenue lies. it's a myth that that flood myths aren't found all around the world. They're found all around the world. And where you've got enough detail in the myths, in the individual myths, they're connected with the Pleiades. How did that happen? You know. So there's this one woman who edited a book. I don't know, it's Penguin or something. I don't know, blame Penguin for everything. It was assigned a text. It was Epic of Gilgamesh, and she was saying, if they are found around the world more than you'd expect, they were probably spread by missionaries. No. How did the missionaries come to this wily conclusion? Wow, if they had a flood myth up in the Norse area, well, it would come down as snow. Wow. And of course, the missionaries would have to be telling people around the world, wow, let's all get together and say your flood myth involves the Pleiades. Can you do that for us, please? Yeah. When you get a detail like that, it starts to lend, or it should, an aura of authenticity to the reports, objectivity. If you get a bunch of people reporting on an event, and they're differing accounts and stuff like that, but they get one detail in common, and they haven't talked with each other, well, maybe something like that event happened. What you do is you iron out the differences. Well, you get reports of the flood that don't mention anything like the people running to the mountains, or a flood from a particular place. Don't mention anything like a big ark or something like that. They don't mention anything like Noah and so on and so forth. People running off to the mountains. One account says people ran off the mountains and water was rising, but luckily enough, some of the mountains rose faster than water. I don't know what the detail in that means. Might mean nothing. Might mean something significant. I don't know. You'll run across other details that, again, might not be details of anything. One tradition has the flood waters coming down and drop so big that they kill babies. Is that a detail that reflects anything like reality? Who knows? Others, the waters coming down from the flood were boiling hot. Of course, I guess killed people. Couldn't just drown. Boiling hot. So, what you try to do, you don't have to do anything, but what I try to do is even out the differences, and there aren't that many similarities. There's the Pleiades, and as we've seen, if you choose not to see, that's fine too. With the nature of the water coming down is different. And what I want to talk about, taking a while getting into it, is when the Indo-European languages started splitting up. So there's a guy called Fraser. I think it's Fraser, not Frazier, who collected a bunch of myths into a multi-volume series, I gather. I've never seen the full collection. And he called the series collectively The Golden Bough. And funnily enough, in the abridgment, which is fairly large, might be that thick, in hardcover format, there isn't that much mention of the Golden Bough. There is some. But he says it's mistletoe. And I don't see any reason why I'd get that wrong. Mistletoe. And just judging from the legends that he dips into, it looks as though it had common Indo-European roots. I don't think this identification of the Pleiades with mistletoe fell outside of the Indo-European area. I have to check some of that Finnish stuff or whatever, Kalevala. I'll have to check up some of that. But if it's just Indo-European, it would indicate. I'll have to check up. I don't think in Greek myth you've got anything about snowfall coming down. They've got couple of flood myths, at the very least, in the Greek tradition. I think one of them at least was appropriated from somewhere else. The Greeks were great collectors of myths. Like they've got a character called Adonis, and I think it's generally recognized that Adonis in the Greek tradition is adopted from, let's say, the Phoenicians or something like that. Hebrew, which is a related language to Phoenician, has this word. It's found in the Bible, and it's used to refer to the Lord. As I recall, Jews, when they're reading Yahweh, what we say Yahweh, or Jehovah as it's mistranslated, mistranscribed in the King James Version of the Bible, apparently they don't try to pronounce the name. They just say Lord, or I think it might be my Lord, but Lord, Adonai. You see where you don't know. If you can't see it, that's okay. Adonai might be related to Adonis. I think the story goes that Aphrodite, I think the name means born of the foam. I think the idea is that she came from Cyprus. Is it Cyprus or Crete? Cyprus. And I think the idea is that maybe she was Cyprian god or goddess, whatever the term is. Politically correct term is. It will changing. And of course, you got to be careful. It's not significant in terms of meaning, but it might be very significant in politically correct terms. If you are, let's say, employed in academia, you could end up losing your job. You end up getting losing your job, your reputation, your ability to get published, and all that sort of stuff. Fun times. But welcome to the world, of the great wide world of witch hunting. It occurs all over the political spectrum, particularly on the right and left wings, and there are all sorts of religions that love witch hunting. Christianity's had quite a record of it at times, particularly the Catholic side. Hey! I thought you were going to let the dogs out so they could cheerlead.
I could.
5 minutes?
A couple.
A couple of minutes, so I'll try to wrap it up. So it looks as though Indo-Europeans started splitting up before the Younger Dryas. I'm not sure exactly when they date the Younger Dryas, 8,000, 10,000 years ago. Maybe 8,000 BC, 10,000 years ago. Something like that. And I don't know, I think many people would say it started splitting up afterwards. I think the Indo-Europeans had already, before whatever might have been a flood, a big flood, that destroyed a lot of animal species. I suspect they'd already identified the Pleiades with mistletoe, although it's kind of makes you wonder, because mistletoe is a gruesome plant. It grows, it's a parasite. It grows off a, I used to see them face to face, or up close and personal, I should say, in the mulberry trees in Africa. When I was a kid, ages 8 to 10, and it's really gruesome. It's growing right out of another tree branch, and its color is gruesome and all that sort of gruesome stuff. But I'm suspecting that the Greeks had already separated from the Nordic kind of people. Nordic people preserved this. It'd be interesting to see if we can find some sort of record of something like